What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily. So I've had the 2020 iPhone SE for almost 3 weeks now. And in this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about my experience with this phone so far and compare it mainly to the iPhone 8. The reason I want to focus on this comparison in particular is because anyone coming from, say, the original iPhone SE or an iPhone 6 or iPhone 7, it's already pretty understood that that's a pretty big, worthwhile upgrade. But jumping from an iPhone 8 to the iPhone SE may not seem like that big of a change. So I wanted to sort of go over some of my thoughts on whether or not I think it's genuinely worth the upgrade. So first off, let's talk about price. As we all know, the new iPhone SE retails for $399. While it is the cheapest iPhone Apple offers right now by a significant margin, I do realize it's still a decent chunk of money to spend. But even at that price, it is far and away the best value iPhone Apple has ever offered. To put it into perspective, the iPhone 8 sold for $699 when it first launched in 2017. A year later, it dropped to $599, and by 2019, Apple was selling it for $449. If you bought an iPhone 8 at any point over the last 3 years, you paid quite a bit more than what the iPhone SE sells for today. And yes, I do realize the iPhone 8 started as a flagship device, and the iPhone SE is not really a flagship device, but just stick with me here. The iPhone 8 was the same phone year after year. It started as that flagship device at first, but then turned into resold old inventory, just priced lower. Apple never added any new hardware specs or upgrades. The iPhone 8 was never comparable to the rest of the lineup since it was just old stock. This time around, not only is the price lower once again, it's actually a somewhat new, upgraded device that is comparable to even the $1,000 flagship iPhone 11 Pro line. And I'll talk about what I mean by that in just a minute, but obviously it mainly has to do with those internal specs. Specifically for iPhone 8 owners, the new iPhone SE is the first and only new phone that fits the same design and form factor that you're used to. And you're paying the cheapest prices Apple has offered in a long time, likely far cheaper than what you paid for your iPhone 8 if you bought it new at any point over the last 3 years. That $399 price point for the iPhone SE is honestly really solid when you start to break it down. Now, I think the biggest thing iPhone 8 users are going to appreciate with the new iPhone SE is the simple fact that it's basically the same phone. If you kept an iPhone 8 up to this point, it's likely because either the larger size of the new phones or the home buttonless design wasn't anything you were interested in. I guess Apple recognized this and decided for at least one more time now, they'd offer the iconic original iPhone setup with the home button, Touch ID, and extra large bezels all around. I see comments all the time criticizing how old and dated this design is, how you get such a small display, how it doesn't look like any other phone in 2020. But here's the thing, if you're thinking that way, this phone was just never intended for you. The iPhone SE is specifically for the people who want this kind of setup. If you have an iPhone XR, for example, you probably wouldn't replace it with an iPhone SE. If you have a current iPhone 11, obviously you aren't going to go backwards unless you really missed this setup. And if you have literally any Android device released over the last 4 years, the iPhone SE isn't going to be something you like either. But for iPhone 8 users, and by extension the older iPhone users as well, this is exactly what you've been waiting for. The same familiar design, the same small and comfortable form factor, the same device you already know and love, just with some worthwhile upgrades thrown in. And as a phone by itself, there's nothing really wrong with this setup at all. It's one of the smallest devices released from any company in 2020, which makes it super comfortable in the hand and in a pocket. And while it sells at a mid-range smartphone price point, you get flagship materials. It's all glass and aluminum, just like the iPhone 8, which was a flagship phone, like I said, in its own right back when it was released. For iPhone 8 users, the lack of any design changes with the new SE is probably a good thing. And it may sound weird, but it's one of the main reasons why I think the new SE is actually a good upgrade. You aren't expected to adapt to anything new or different that you may not like, and it's probably why iPhone 8 users have held on for so long. The new, large form factor, all-display smartphones just aren't for them. Unfortunately, the lack of any noticeable design changes means that if you were hoping to get any sort of upgrades at all, you're kind of out of luck. For the most part, the new SE consists of iPhone 8 parts and pieces. The housing and body are obvious, but the display hasn't changed at all either. It's the same 1334 by 750 resolution IPS LCD Retina display that's been around for forever now. There's no higher resolution, no AMOLED, no real changes whatsoever. And that's sort of a bummer, considering how good of displays smartphones have nowadays, even on some of the cheapest devices out now. Touch ID, while just still being there is great, hasn't improved either. There's nothing wrong with it. I still actually prefer it to Face Unlock, honestly, but Apple didn't make it any faster or more accurate. It's the exact same thing as it was on the iPhone 8. Wireless charging is here on the iPhone SE as well, just like it was on the iPhone 8, but it isn't any faster or better. Now, the new iPhone SE does actually support slightly faster charging via the Lightning port, but you still have to go out and buy a USB-C plug and cable separately. It doesn't come in the box. And the actual battery itself is the same capacity in both phones, 1828 milliamp. So far in my time using the SE, I just haven't really noticed any better battery life, and I don't necessarily think you should expect that either. The dual stereo speakers are also the same too, one down below and one in the earpiece. Once again, nothing wrong with the setup as a whole, but if you wanted anything better, it isn't here with the new SE. At this point, you're probably thinking, okay, there's practically nothing that's really been upgraded. Of course, it's not worth getting an iPhone SE over an iPhone 8, but there's really two reasons in particular when it comes to actual upgrades that genuinely do make it worth the upgrade. The first, like I mentioned earlier, are the changes to the internal specs. Inside the new iPhone SE is Apple's A13 Bionic chipset. It's a 2-year newer processor than the A11 and the iPhone 8, and the A13 is the same chipset that's in Apple's $1,000 iPhone 11 Pro line. Paired with 3 GB of RAM in the SE over just 2 GB in the iPhone 8, you are getting Apple's 2020 flagship specs, exactly what they pack inside their most expensive Pro iPhones, for a fraction of the cost. Not only is this going to be a decent upgrade over the iPhone 8, it's likely the single factor that makes the SE the best all-around value iPhone Apple has ever offered. Now, I do have a dedicated speed test video that offers a more in-depth look at how much better the SE is, but in everyday tasks, you're going to see a nice improvement, and when you launch more intense apps like games, for example, you'll certainly feel an even bigger difference. Even though it's super inexpensive in comparison, the iPhone SE, for all intents and purposes, is a fully capable 2020 flagship smartphone on the inside. Beyond that, while the iPhone 8 is still getting the latest updates of iOS, it likely only has 1 or 2 more years of support. Jumping up to the new iPhone SE will yield 5, 6, or maybe even 7 additional years of software updates. And if you held on to your iPhone 8 for a long time, you can rest easy knowing you'll be able to hold on to your iPhone SE for likely even longer. In my opinion, the internal specs alone are what sell this iPhone SE. It's what makes the phone a significant upgrade over the 8, and a sound long-term investment as well. But there's one more significant upgrade that I think iPhone 8 owners will fully appreciate. Just like with the internal specs, the camera on the iPhone 8, I'd argue, is comparable to most flagships on the market today. Now, on paper, it doesn't really look like anything has changed. It's still a single 12 megapixel rear lens around back. But paired with a significantly better internal processor to help capture the shots, as well as some improved software support, the new iPhone SE is going to take significantly better pictures and videos. The color is more accurate, the exposure is better, the detail is like night and day, and with videos, stabilization has significantly improved. This really brings the iPhone SE up to par with the camera experience on the iPhone 11s, even if you are missing out on the extra lenses and night mode, which I think is the biggest bummer. I really have no issue saying that the new iPhone SE is the best single lens picture and video taker, and is likely one of the best smartphone cameras at under $500, probably second only to the Pixel 3a. Up front, it's kind of the same story with the selfie camera, though to a lesser extent. It's the same single lens 7 megapixel shooter, so hardware-wise nothing has changed, but when you actually take some side-by-side pictures, the better processing power and software upgrades allow for better selfies. Not significantly better necessarily, but noticeably better, and that's still something at least. So here's the thing. If your first thought about the iPhone SE is about how terrible it is as a 2020 smartphone, just understand that it wasn't meant for you anyway. This is a phone that's mainly for iPhone 8 users, and especially other older iPhone users as well. It's meant to finally get them to upgrade, and I have to say, I honestly think the new SE is the upgrade you've been waiting for if you're in that camp. On the surface, it may not seem like much, but a vast majority of the phone itself is what OG iPhone users wanted to keep anyway. The home button, Touch ID, the small design, the compact form factor, it's what they enjoy and what they want in a smartphone. Do I wish there were some other upgrades? Yeah, of course, but I think the two big ones Apple focused on, the internal specs with speed and performance boosts, and the major upgrade to the camera, those are certainly worthy enough to justify upgrading. And by the way, you can still sell your old iPhone 8 for like $250 in places like Swappa, eBay, and Facebook. If you're comfortable doing that, you'd be paying like $150 or $175 out of pocket for the new SE, and at that price it's an absolute steal. So there you go, those are all of my thoughts on upgrading from an iPhone 8 to the iPhone SE. What do you guys think? Is it really worth the upgrade? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know your thoughts, of course. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. Be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.